A week from when I'm recording this video, half the league in the NFL will be in their offseason. They will be talking about offseason plans, what guys they should move off of. They're going to be in exit meetings. They're going to be talking about trades. Should they do for the draft? All of that. And yeah, a bunch of front offices will do that for teams that are in the playoffs. But half the league will be in the offseason in a week's time from when I'm recording this. The Indianapolis Colts are one of those teams. That season will end in a week. Anthony Richardson, their quarterback that they drafted with the 4th overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft, finishing his second year, missing the final 2 games with severe back spasms in a season where he was benched, called out by veterans privately, and just so much drama and tension surrounding the Anthony Richardson situation in Indianapolis. A season where there was a clear shot to make the playoffs, and this team was upset by the team that had the number 1 overall pick at the moment in the New York Giants in week 17. There is still so much to talk about with this team, so let's get into that. This is Son of a Sports. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. I want to say before I talk about everything that a lot of this video is going to be based around the Athletic article written by Zach Kiefer and James Boyd. If you don't feel like watching this video and you feel like you need a better description of what happened, I'd suggest reading this article. It's incredible. James Boyd has been an outright incredible reporter for the Colts this year, and I couldn't give him any more praise. But regardless of everything, let's get into the video. Let's start with the Anthony Richardson back situation because this is a severe back spasm injury, and this might be a bigger story down the road. Richardson, in a year where he was benched, where he was called out by veteran teammates, now has to deal with back issues. It's one thing to be patient with the kid through his accuracy issues and the tapping out situation. That is one thing. But a back injury is much more serious. It's a different thing to deal with. And in an offseason where there's going to be so many questions about his future, this makes him much more real. The man himself said he was crawling around his home during week 17. That is not a good thing. And if there is something in the offseason that leads to him saying, oh, I'm calling it quits, I'm retiring, or I need to walk away, or the Colts getting rid of him because he can't get through this, it is because of this injury. So before I go through anything and criticize the Colts organization, which I'm going to do today, this is a serious situation that needs to be monitored going forward because back issues and back injuries are something that most athletes struggle to get through, and it ends a lot of careers before any other injury. About an hour before I started recording this, Richardson was officially ruled out for the last game of the Colts season, and I already said he would miss the final 2 games, but yeah, I'm missing the final 2 games of the year for back injury sucks, and if this is anything more than back spasms, I feel really awful for the kid, for the 22-year-old, and the Colts organization. This is the last I'll talk about it because I'm not Richardson, I'm not the Colts, I'm not a doctor. So yeah, let's just start talking about the Colts and everything about them. The Athletic article details a lot of the dysfunction within the Colts organization and actually gives a quote from a veteran player that says, "There's no vision. From the top down, from the front office to the coaches to the players, no one is ever on the same page. And every year at the end, we're sitting here losing. If you look at the best teams in the league, they all have a vision and they commit to it. There's no vision here." And if you look at the Colts over the last few years, that's pretty accurate in terms of what has ended their seasons. If you go look at 2021 with Carson Wentz, how that year ended, they had a serious shot at making the playoffs, and they had to just beat the team that was going to have the number 1 overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft, and they lost. They lost. It was a win and get in, and it was like a 99% chance, and they lost against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was disastrous, and they blamed Wentz, and they just moved on and acted like that was nothing. That was a Carson Wentz thing. It wasn't a Colts thing. And then they go into 2022. If you remember that season, Matt Ryan and the Colts. If you remember Frank Reich getting fired mid-season, them hiring Jeff Saturday straight off the set from ESPN. And Saturday's a great football mind and an NFL legend, or Colts legend. And I don't think you should have hired him mid-season and brought in the guy outside the building. And then their season ended disastrously. They got the 4th overall pick. And 2023 is the one recent year where it's like it doesn't end horrifically. They lost their final game of the year to miss the playoffs, but it was a bright sign that it was Gardner Minshew that lost that game and not some Colts disaster. It was We had our backup quarterback. We didn't have our guy. It's year one of a new coach and a rebuild, and we almost made the playoffs. That's awesome. Well, 2024 is going to end, and they lost to the team with the number 1 overall pick in week 16. Then their quarterback week 17, and their quarterback had to miss the final 2 games of the year because of back injuries. And now there's more reports about the building and the locker room and veterans being angry. There are some serious issues here. If you notice a trend in any of my videos, it's that I like to point to ownership for a lot of issues for organizations. And I think the Colts and Jim Irsay is a prime example of an ownership being an issue. And Irsay has a lot of issues that are very clear over the last few years. He meddles a lot with serious decisions. He is very impulsive with player decisions, but very, very conservative with personnel decisions in the front office, and very stagnant and conservative in terms of spending money and free agency. And that's a big thing with him and Chris Ballard, who I will talk about in just a second. Irsay as a whole is not a very great owner. And if you have been a Colts fan, Colts player, you know this and you've talked about it. And there are a lot of Colts legends that have tiptoed around it. A lot of Colts players that have tiptoed around it. A lot of coaches for this organization that have tiptoed around it. And Colts media will tell you a lot of the time, we all know who it is. This is Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis Colts GM. I've already mentioned him. Insiders believe there's a chance his job's on the line, but I don't think so. He's been here for 8 years. And yeah, he went through the Jags situation where they won and got it. They were supposed to win and get in, and the Giants win and stay competitive in the playoffs. And they were both eliminated in both those games. Ballard's been the GM for 8 years, like I said, and they haven't made the playoffs more than twice in those 8 years. They made it in 2018 with Andrew Luck and Frank Reich, and Reich's first year as the head coach, and Luck's last year as the Colts quarterback and as an NFL quarterback. I miss Andrew Luck every day. Then the 2020 season where they had Phillip Rivers and Frank Reich again, made the playoffs and lost in the first round. Yeah, outside of that, they have not made the playoffs. They have been somewhat competitive in some years. You remember the Wentz year where they lost in the final game. I think in the Brissett year, they were somewhat competitive. People don't remember that fully. Last year, they were competitive in the AFC South and lost in the final game of the year to miss the playoffs. And they were somewhat competitive this year, honestly, too. But Ballard has been very conservative in terms of how he has approached his GM role. He is not very active in free agency. He is very conservative with trades and relies a lot on the draft. If there is a template for how the Colts are ran and they go about things, it's a lot to how the Cowboys do it. I think the Colts draft a little bit better, but the Cowboys and the Colts are a lot the same if you look at how they approach free agency. Colts don't spend a lot of money. They are very, very, very stagnant and just let things go by and develop a lot of guys. And the same core they've had since 2019 is there. A lot of their guys are still there, and they don't like to change things up. And Ballard has gotten a lot of criticism for refusing to make big changes. And if you go look at the article again with The Athletic, they mention there's been no elite edge rusher for this team since Robert Mathis in 2013. There's no true number 1 wide receiver. This tight end room is absolutely awful. And if even a casual fan could watch a Colts game and be like, this tight end room is just really bad. They desperately need a tight end. If they had an average one, I think the passing game would improve by a lot more, and running game, honestly. This has been the same story for them. And it's like the Cowboys. They draft well. They sit in free agency. They pay their decent players and guys that develop a little bit some good money, and then they miss the playoffs because they bring in the same core every year. They don't really get superstars because they sit in the middle of the league, and they just failed to really capitalize on having a decent roster. I don't know what happens with Anthony Richardson, and I don't blame the Colts for making that pick. But if you look at the other picks over the last few years, Latu and Adonai Mitchell are two great examples of, yeah, they really hit in this draft. I loved both of these guys. They were two of my favorite players in the entire draft. I'm not saying they were two of the best players. Latu, I think, was like a top 3 defensive player for me in the draft process. And Adonai was like a top 4 receiver for me. But I think they really did hit with those picks. And I hope one of them could be a superstar. Latu looks like he can be given the playing time over time. He could be a star. Adonai has struggled a lot this year. But if you look at recent drafts, I mean, they're not getting superstars. And like Bernard Ryman, I think, was a really good pick from a few years ago. I think Jalen Jones is a really quality pick, a guy that's turned into a good corner despite falling to the 7th round. And he goes to my alma mater. He goes to my school. And I remember having a really good friend that was childhood best friends with him, and knowing that Jones was a 1st to 2nd round projection going into the 2022 season. And A&M struggles throughout that year led to him and current Jaguars starting safety Antonio Johnson falling fast in that draft. But if you go look at the rest of these drafts, they're not getting superstars. And for a roster that doesn't go out and go get outside talent, you can't build a Super Bowl winning team or a playoff team without at least getting someone that's a superstar. Ballard deserves some credit for going out and getting DeForest Buckner in a trade and then trading up for Jonathan Taylor. What I will say with that is I think Irsay was the one that pushed for Jonathan Taylor, so I'm not going to give Irsay credit. But Jonathan Taylor is an incredible player. He was incredible in college. And going up and getting a guy that's been a staple for their franchise over the last 5 years was a good move. DeForest Buckner, trading for him was really good, but ever since getting DeForest Buckner, this franchise has gone nowhere. They haven't made any leaps. They haven't made any bounds, and they've been in the same spot since getting him. And that's very clear in this Athletic article. And I've seen a lot of people come at Buckner, and I get both sides of the Buckner argument from this article. Reportedly, Buckner went to Richardson and was mad and said, I signed an extension here because I believed in you, but you got to do your part. I've seen people angry that why would Buckner say that if everyone knew when they drafted Richardson was going to be a guy that they have to develop, they have to be patient with, and they have to take their time with. So why is Buckner thinking, yeah, this is this win guy now, he's going to come in and immediately contribute to the team? And then I also see people saying, Buckner probably is saying this because of his work ethic. I mean, go look at everything there. They're trying to hold Richardson accountable and all that. I understand both sides of it. Buckner hasn't been patient. And if you look at some of what this article is trying to say, it's that Buckner and a lot of the veterans are wondering why they didn't stay with Flacco or why didn't Flacco work, because they're still mentally stuck in that cycle of going after veterans like Matt Ryan or Carson Wentz or Phillip Rivers and seeing what it could do with them instead of being patient with the young kid and rebooting everything. To be fair to Buckner, he is 30 years old. He's declining and his career is running out of time, and he doesn't have a lot of time left to go get a Super Bowl. And then the reports about guys aren't showing up on time. And then when they asked Buckner about it, we've had some issues where we haven't had people being accountable and stuff like that. And they could be talking about Richardson, and we've called people out on it. And I mean, that's what happens on almost every good team. That is not a thing that's common on good teams. There's no effort issue. There's no guys saying, I don't think the urgency is there. I don't think the details are there. I don't think the effort is there. That's what Kenny Moore II said. That's a team that is about to fire a coach and is a top 5 pick in the draft. And then Zaire Franklin talking about the Giants on his podcast. He has a podcast where he talks about teams and calls out people. I want to play a team I know we can spank, like the Giants. I want to play a team that ain't good with the big market. I'm trying to get my rank up. Give me the 4-11 Giants. Yeah, the 4-11 Giants dominated them. Scored 45 points. Most points on that defense with Buckner and Zaire Franklin and Kenny Moore. And Kenny has been a veteran, and from everything I've seen, Kenny's been great. But they dropped 45. They dropped their most points on a team since 2019, I think. And this is a screen grab from what McAfee said after that game from week 17 where they lost to the Giants. And he said, I don't think it's like a light switch. All right, we're going to become pros now, but maybe it is. What do I know? I hope they become a good franchise again. This city deserves it. The OGs in the Colts building deserve it. Equipment managers, trainers, ticketing, PR, sales. On the flip side, the players, coaches in that building deserve whatever happens to them. Your unwarranted arrogance, laziness, and lack of professionalism has led you to another early vacation, which is probably what most of you entitled bums have been hoping for. He said he wasn't renewing his season ticket holder spot. And he said, I don't speak for the city. I don't speak for all ex-Colts players because I was only a punter, nominated for the Hall of Fame 3 times now, but nonetheless, I speak from my own perspective. I've never seen a group waste opportunities, talent, money more than this group. And I think McAfee is a little mad because of what Zaire Franklin said about him earlier this year and called him out for calling out Richardson. And I understood why Colts media was angry at McAfee for going at Richardson the way he did. But I also understand people are watching this organization of guys that haven't won anything. They haven't. They made one playoff game about 4 or 5 seasons ago. And they haven't done anything since. And they're still acting like they're here and that they're a Super Bowl team and that they need this one guy to get it together. This is a serious culture issue across the building. I don't think it's just DeForest Buckner or just Jonathan Taylor or just Kenny Moore II or Zaire Franklin. I think it's everybody. I think it's Irsay from the top. I think it's Ballard from the front office. I even think it's Steichen at this point. I have been defending him, and everyone across the league has praised him as this offensive guru, and I think he still is that. But it's clear, Steichen, Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator, who in times gives good quotes, but most of the time is just, he's not a good coordinator. He doesn't call good defenses. The front office, the ownership, and the players, the veterans on this team, there is serious culture issues with the Colts. And the Athletic article talks about, again, some of his other quotes. Late to meetings never happens on good teams. Late to skipping treatment never happens on good teams. That somehow Richardson thought it was okay to do that there's a locker room issue, that it's an indicator of a losing attitude radiating through a building that was built by greats. And the Colts, at least in my lifetime, have been a organization that has had some great moments. Andrew Luck is one of my all-time favorite quarterbacks, one of my favorite athletes to ever watch. And Anthony Richardson is a prospect that I very much have faith in if given the right tools and environment. Shane Steichen was someone I was a big fan of before this year. And I've always wanted to see the Colts do well because their fan base has been a diehard fan base that has been starving for hope in an era where it's very easy to win the AFC South. And this sucks. This sucks. The worst possible way this season could have gone is how this season went. Your quarterback got benched. And now there's a question of whether he has chronic back issues. Your entire team's culture has been called out by former players. T.Y. Hilton responded to this tweet and was just did the popcorn gif. There is serious problems with this organization, and everyone knows it. I feel awful for Colts fans. There's no clear answer here other than blow this thing up. If I was a Colts fan, I'd want Irsay to sell immediately. I've already heard a lot of people saying they're not buying their season tickets next year, outside of McAfee. If I was a Colts fan, I'd want Irsay to sell. I'd want Ballard gone, maybe even Steichen gone, because this is a clear issue all around. And let me finish the Richardson thing with saying, Richardson, if he didn't do the work, if the Colts side is true, he deserves a lot of the criticism, if not all the criticism, that people have given him over the last few years. He was drafted with the 4th overall pick despite not being a great college quarterback. He was seen as a physical specimen, and if he really just didn't put in the work and just relied on his physical gifts, then shame on him. He's a professional athlete. He's a grown man that should be putting in the effort, showing up every day, and was drafted with the 4th overall pick to be a franchise guy. If it's a Colts culture thing, then yeah, then they suck. And I think it is a Colts culture thing. Regardless of what happened with Richardson, the Colts have issues. But if Richardson didn't put in the work and the effort to be the best version of himself as possible, he deserves as much criticism as you can get without going too far. Because there's no place for that in professional sports. You have to give everything you have and have as much work ethic as possible. And if you slack off, especially someone taken with that high of a pick despite not really earning it, then shame on you. My final message, Andrew Luck is God. And every day I think about Andrew Luck and how much I miss him. I will name my firstborn Andrew because of Andrew Luck. And my name is Andrew. I love Andrew Luck with everything I have. And jokes aside, the Colts have issues. And this has been a thing since Luck was there. Maybe even since Manning. I mean, Irsay's been the owner for a long time, and Irsay has had issues for a long time. Regardless of everything I have said with Andrew Luck, I will die for Andrew Luck. The Colts have issues, and I think I tried my best pointing that out today. This is Son of a Sports. I'll catch y'all next time.